Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video. And I feel like a lot of us were starting to wonder if rogues were just immune to being nerfed. Was there some collusion going on internally with rogues being able to avoid getting nerfed in PvP because they've just been absolutely crushing it at the moment? And it appears in this most recent round of hot fixes and class tuning that they are not immune to the nerf bats. So in today's video, we'll be covering some of these upcoming hot fixes, as well as possibly talking about some that should also have happened that aren't happening here. So for the first big one here, Brewmaster is getting another nerf. Fire breath damage is going to be doing 35%. Actually, is this a buff? Fire breath is going to deal 35% additional damage in PvP. They just said that there's no way. They just did a nerf to nerf the range of it, but they're buffing the damage. See, there's no way, right? Is Brewmaster actually going to survive? It's possible. I mean, I don't feel like Brewmaster is really viable because of its damage necessarily, as opposed to like its defense. We'll have to wait and see. I haven't been seeing a tremendous amount of them, and I thought that most recent round of changes to the CC range was going to maybe knock them out, but now they're getting buffed here. So really odd to see like a tank spec getting that much attention when there's other specs in the game still that are kind of like really struggling, honestly. For Disc Priest, now Disc Priest has been overperforming to a tremendous margin, doing like equivalent damage to some DPS. So let's see what's going on with their changes here. Sins of the Many's effect is now reduced by 50% in PvP combat. This has to do with damage increase based on your atonement. So that's a significant damage loss. Atonement healing is increased by 40% in PvP combat, up from 20%. And I just finished a solo shuffle lobby. It was probably 16 to 20% of my healing. And if you're really good at healing with atonement, it's gonna be higher than that. So your overall sustain healing is going up, which is honestly where you're really weak. But your damage is going down, which is like the main contributing factor to like your viability at the moment. So the developer notes, we want Discipline Priest to contribute more offensively than other healers, but currently its damage is higher than we're comfortable with. On top of a recent bug fix to expiation damage, we feel it's best to bring down Discipline's overall damage while equalizing healing from atonement, which we feel is in a good spot. So you're going to really feel the effects here in terms of burst damage, killing people in small windows of time, which honestly PvP has like a problem at the moment. But they didn't look at things like the Evoker burst one shot, Ellie Shaman proc one shot. Like there's still a lot of one shots in the game. And you know, nerfing healers kind of feels bad. I think nerfing the damage side of it, buffing the healing is good, but would have liked to have seen more changes. And here we've got the rogue changes, like the creme de la creme, the changes that everyone somewhat expected to see on the most recent round of tuning changes, but they just weren't there. Deathmark duplicated effects will now deal 50% of their normal damage, down from 70%. So another 20% nerf. Mind-numbing poison's effectiveness has now been reduced by 47% in PvP combat, which is a big deal. This is one of the very frustrating effects of having a rogue on you, is just the casting speed reductions, the haste reduction of having this poison, as well as the shiv enhancement of numbing poison will be reduced by 52%, up from 40. And also they fixed a bug with improved Garrote where the PvP multiplier wasn't being applied to it, which is a 20% nerf to Garrote, and Garrote is like your number one damage pretty much at all times. So a 20% nerf to your highest damage overall, a 20% nerf to your burst cooldown damage, and some modifications to the way that mind numbing interacts with haste effects and with your cast speeds, which is like a really frustrating part of dealing with rogue. And I think this will apply to all rogues that are running mind numbing, hopefully not just assassination. But we don't see any changes for subtlety rogue, which I think is still going to be in a pretty dominant position. Assassination was maybe a little bit more straightforward to pick up with what you're doing, tunnel attack target, kidney shot it, where subtlety is kind of like pick your moments, what's the best target, how do you swap in the middle of your push, which is why I think there's less subtlety rogues at higher rating as opposed to lower rating. It's not just attack one target, rinse repeat on that target. It's kind of like take advantage of any given situation, but if you know those situations and can mark them and execute on them, subtlety rogue is like absolutely one of the best specs in PvP at the moment with the tools that it has. It's just it's not as intuitive, it's not as straightforward, which is why we see less rogues at lower rating and more rogues at higher rating, because the ones that are intuitive or have played enough to know those given circumstances will take full advantage of them. That's why we see them represented so much in tournament, but makes me wonder if they're hesitant to nerf them because of the low representation at lower rating, as opposed to just higher rating compared to other specs. The curve just kind of like falls off. It's only a very few amount of rogues having all the success and a lot of rogues having absolutely no success. We still are moving forward. 10.0.7 is going to be coming out. That's when we're getting the Ret Paladin rework. So I'm not really surprised to not see a huge amount of changes hotfix wise for Ret Paladins, because you're getting so much attention in that patch. It is possible that that's where they are aiming, and maybe these are changes that aren't falling in line with changes that they're planning on making for 10.0.7 that they feel need to be made right now. Displaced representation was really high. Obviously, Assassination Rogue has been an ongoing problem, but I do wonder if Assassination Rogue falls off a bit more. Now, no, it's not just everybody flavor of the month re-rolling to it. If there, what's the next spec, right? Because it's almost like there's always a next spec until we get to a little bit more of a closely balanced window. I think reining in the one shots would go a long way with helping healers out in PvP, because people critting, I feel like the threshold for the highest damage on a crit at the moment needs to be somewhere from like 150k to like max 180k. If you can crit higher than 180k in one global, I think that's way too high, because that's like you're almost at the point of like non-responsiveness. And there are some spells that are hitting 230 270 thousand damage in a global, and some of them are instant, right? Even something like an Ellie Shaman can do upwards of 200 plus thousand damage in a global cooldown, which with their current health pools around 300,000. It's just like you're getting into water where it's just like you can't really react to that, especially ones that are retroactive like Ellie Shaman, where it's like it happens after the fact, it procs after a lava burst. It can be really frustrating to deal with as a healer, is those types of one shots. And maybe you can see it coming, but your DPS don't see it coming, and they don't trade a cooldown, and then there's a lot of frustration created as a result of that. I much prefer kind of like the attrition style of like you're just struggling trying to keep people alive, not the like immediate Thanos snaps. While it's good to have some different archetypes of damage, burst damage and sustained damage, I think burst damage, when it hits that too high of a threshold, makes a negative impact on the game. The same way when attrition specs can just take no damage and survive forever, that has a negative impact on the game overall. But I'm really excited to see where they go with this. These are really good changes, giving Disc Priest more atonement healing, bringing down their damage, so you're not fighting triple DPS. These are really targeting the right things for Assassination Rogue. Really good direction. Glad that these got hit in, even despite after the changes that they made previously, where people were like, how did they manage to avoid this, right? And I talked about it at the beginning of this video. So really nice to see that they kind of nipped this in the butt right before the reset is going to be coming out. The next thing also that's a hotly debated topic are these new gems that are coming out in 10.0.7, I think. Maybe it's 10.1, I'm not sure. But there's new gems that you can socket your gear, that now your gear can proc snares and proc extra damage. And it's really reminding me of Domination Shards. It's reminding me in Legion of the relics that you used to have. And those were turned off in PvP because they were really problematic. We're just going to add to like an already imbalanced state of PvP, and PvPers didn't want to grind PvE to get them. So it's my best hope that these things are just disabled in PvP, as their kind of predecessors is the right word, have been, because I think that could be like a sleeper issue that if it comes up, it's not preemptively dealt with, could really cause some grievances in the PvP community that I really don't want to see, because I feel like these changes have been taking the game in a better and better direction. And as we keep moving forward, class reworks, talent overhauls, I'm sure that it's going to continue to get better and better. Main focus right now, I think, should be on getting these one shots under control so that healers aren't quitting the game in droves, because they just like everybody's getting Thanos snapped by somebody who rolls good luck on a crit. I think that would be a really good point to start looking at moving forward. So the main culprits, right, being Ellie Shaman, Ascendance procs, Devastation Evokers. I'd really like to see another change for them, is nerfing the hot top end of their damage and then bringing up the bottom end, like their Disintegrate and stuff like that. The changes that we saw earlier in the expansion, seeing more stuff like that could go a long way for helping Devastation find a more normalized viable position, as opposed to like, yeah, you're viable because half the time you kill somebody in one global, So you can climb as long as you're rolling the lucky side of that. Would be what I would like to see moving forward. But what would you like to see moving forward in terms of changes? Let me know in the comments down below. Other than that, thank you very much for watching the video, and I will catch you in the next one.